This is a production of Gordon College's Scot Radio.
Scot Radio.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the photo finish. Scot Radio's home for motorsports. I'm your host, Ben Schneider. I've got a guest for the second time this year. Doyoung Lee is in the studio with us.
Hello.
Good to see you again, Do.
Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously, championship weekend in Homestead for NASCAR's top three divisions, so we'll get into that eventually. But Do's actually got a paper to finish, so we're going to lead off with the F1 stuff so that he can talk about that and then go finish that because schoolwork, of course, comes first here. But, yeah, I mean, it was just an absolute cracker of a race, like a thrilling Brazilian Grand Prix.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is surprising because the NASCAR playoff defenders will tell me, oh, well, Ben, if the championship's decided with two races ago, nobody's going to care about the last two races, right? While Lewis Hamilton's wrapped the championship up, I don't know, people still watch Brazil, and I think they got their fair share of entertainment from that race.
that was a very entertaining race for sure, especially the end. Yeah. Oh, man.
Well, yeah, let's talk about Brazil. I have to say, it was actually shaping up to be not a terrible race, but just kind of, average, not too much action. There was a little bit of questions with the strategy, who was on the right calls and everything. Max Verstappen was dominant, though.
Absolutely.
Sat on pole, of course. Kid looked absolutely brilliant. And really, there was only one hiccup. Red Bull actually broke their own world record for the fastest pit stop. I think it was 1.82 seconds.
Yep. That's crazy to see. There's teams still running 3-4 seconds on their pit stops, and Red Bull's out here sending out their cars in sub 2.
Red Bull and Williams have historically had the quickest pit crews. That's the only thing Williams are good at these days. But yeah, Red Bull dominated in the pits again as well. But that was where their only hiccup really came because Verstappen was exiting the pits and Williams released Kubica
I was cringing.
a little bit too early.
I was cringing.
And
that hurt.
I don't know who to blame because obviously Robert's going to go when he's told to go.
Absolutely.
And of course the drivers have their side view mirrors and everything, but you're in this tight cockpit. You're focused on your race. If you're told, you've got a clear exit ahead of you, you're going to go.
Yeah.
But they looked into it, gave Kubica a 5-second penalty. Which I think if you're going to penalize him, that was fair. People were talking about, Ferrari driver left his box too early, not so long ago, and it was a fine. They didn't give a time penalty. It didn't impact the race. They just fined Ferrari and said, hey, this is dangerous. Don't do it again. But it occurred to, I guess, the stewards as well, but also the fans, people pointing out on social media, Williams are going to finish last anyway. A 5-second penalty to them means nothing. A fine with the state that Williams is in right now is devastating.
Yeah, that
Williams needs all the cash they can get to try to return to the prominent team they once were, if that's even possible at this point. But yeah, so Max Verstappen winning the race, obviously not too surprising. I think he absolutely thoroughly deserved it. A brilliant drive from him. After Max, the running order, just crazy. I mean, it was shaping up, looked like the top five were going to be two Red Bulls, a Mercedes, and two Ferraris. And then we get this safety car because Bottas's engine fails or he has some sort of mechanical problem. So that bunches the field up. And then as a Ferrari fans, you thought Singapore 2017 was bad? I mean, I started screaming at my laptop as I was watching the race. What in the world was Sebastian Vettel thinking?
I think that was the greatest thing I've seen in this season of Formula One.
I hope the Netflix cameras were all over that. I cannot wait for Drive to Survive. That episode is, I know Mercedes and Ferrari skipped season 1. So glad everybody's on board for season 2 because that's gonna. Oh man, I hope they got some good footage out of that. But yeah, so I don't know if you know this, Del, but I was gonna do a school project for intro production last year with one of my F1 games. So I went out and bought a Mercedes Polo because I was going to use it as a prop for that. Ended up scrapping the idea, but I've still got the Polo. So
yes.
I thought about walking around campus the rest of the day with a bag over my head because I was so embarrassed, but I put the Mercedes Polo on. I was just like, I'm done, guys. I can't take it anymore. Y'all are just so
I don't know what they're
have
doing.
No words.
I don't know what
no
Ferrari's doing. There's already tension or supposed tension between the two drivers. Ferrari says it's nothing. They're going to all be good. I'm sure they were angry after this.
They came out today and said, "Oh, it's a good thing it happened today."
Yeah, I don't.
Not next year. It was like, it would have been a good thing if it hadn't happened at all, right? That would be the good thing. Like,
it didn't have to happen, but they're competing. I understand. That's just the name of the game. You're just going at each other. You just want to get in front. I don't know. Maybe being teammates, they should have been a little bit less aggressive at that point. But as a result, both of them lost their, high finish that they were wanting. But that's just really disappointing to see.
Who do you think was at fault?
I thought Vettel was at fault, but then in some angles, I was like, wait, maybe Leclerc could have done something differently.
Because they had the onboard, and Leclerc's steering, we're sitting across from each other, so for my view, it's like this. For yours, it's like this.
Yeah.
And like his steering wheel is like pointed a little bit into Vettel.
Yeah.
But when I look at the racing lines from the angle head on, the TV camera, it looks to me like they're just Vettel gets forced out almost into the grass at first, and then Leclerc moves over, and Vettel just keeps coming over with him, and then they touch, and
that was really unlucky.
Yeah. And Leclerc went out immediately, and Vettel also got a puncture pretty much right away.
Yeah, that's really tough to see.
Yeah,
at least one of them didn't even come out alive. Both of them just had to go down like that.
Yeah. Flashbacks to Turkey in 2010 when Vettel was driving for Red Bull. He collided with Webber. Except in that race, Webber went on to still limp his damaged car home in third. Like, now both of their cars are out in a matter of seconds, just like that.
And another disappointment.
Yep. Which meant another restart. And it was like a NASCAR race almost with all the restarts at the end.
I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. And it looked for a while, my heart sunk for Alex Albon. Because it looked for a while like the kid's been driving so well with Red Bull. He hasn't had a podium yet, though. It looked like, because once the Ferraris are out, Bottas has blown his engine, Ferraris are out, it's like, okay, these three are, the top teams are obviously going to be on the podium. Although it looked for a while because Mercedes, I guess we'll talk about that first. Mercedes brought Hamilton back into the pits to get on fresher tires, and at first I was thinking, what are you doing? Like they gave up the track position.
I don't know what the strategy was. Maybe I was like, interesting. Mercedes is gonna pull off the impossible. I don't know what I've never seen anything like it.
I don't know if they thought fresher tires were gonna make that much of a difference, but
yeah,
I don't know. But whatever. The Red Bulls were lined up 1-2. So how do you like this? Red Bull in P1, Red Bull in P2, Toro Rosso in P3. We could have had an all Honda engine podium.
Yep.
And
I noticed
Fernando Alonso is sitting somewhere just
screaming at the TV.
I mean, and McLaren too. McLaren got on the podium eventually. We'll get into that, but yeah. So
I mean, Red Bull's doing great.
Yeah,
Honda engines.
Albon was running in second, and you had to think Hamilton was going to get around him eventually, just because he had the fresher rubber.
Yeah.
But maybe you could say it was a bit too optimistic by Hamilton. Maybe Albon left the door open and then shut it, but slight contact that sent Albon spinning, and he was relegated to, I think it was 14th.
Yeah.
So just my heart goes out to the guy because
it was surprising. I mean, I didn't know if Hamilton. I mean, actually, I kind of expected Hamilton to get a 5-second penalty, but
I did too. But
yeah, it's like I don't know. Was that just racing, or did he really deserve it? I mean,
well, I would say let them race. That to me looked like Hamilton said like that's on me. Obviously, I didn't want to spin him out.
But that's racing.
But, yeah, but I found it funny that the same Hamilton haters on Twitter. Behind the keyboard warriors were the same fans because everybody after Canada was like Sebastian Vettel won that race.
Absolutely.
In virtually everybody's opinion, he crossed the line first. That was a racing incident. They both nobody got hurt or damaged in that incident, if you can even call it an incident. I was like, oh, but the FIA says no, he rejoined the track in an unsafe manner, 5-second penalty. It's just like, can you here's a. And, like, the Kentucky Derby had just happened, too, with that whole controversy. So, like, here's a revolutionary idea. The car that crosses the finish line first
exactly
wins the race.
I mean,
let the drivers race. But because you want the stewards to stay consistent, I personally was just for we can look at changing how the stewards call the race going forward. But I thought if you're going to be consistent, I think you have to penalize Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I thought it was hypocritical for the Ferrari fans to, I think rightly say like, hey, Vettel doesn't deserve this, to now turn around and say, oh, Hamilton even admitted it. You got to penalize him. Obviously, that's a clear call. I think the stewards they did the right thing in principle, given how they've called races this season.
Yeah.
But I still don't agree with the call, generally speaking. I wish we would have less rules and less regulations.
Yeah,
and
all these
let the guys
5-second
race.
penalties, everyone's dropping off the podium onto the podium. I mean, I don't really know I don't know if I really like what's going on with Formula One right now. I think the stewards are really inconsistent race to race. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some change will come 2020. Someone will make a change.
Yeah, but Carlos Sainz finished fourth, promoted to the podium, and only Carlos Sainz could get a podium without it being shown on TV. Matt Gallagher and all the crew at WTF1. Like, if you're not if you're an F1 fan, you're not following them on social media. You have to stop listening to us, go follow them on social media, and then put us back on. Like, it's incredible content. You're not going to get anywhere else. But they've called FOM out pretty much every race this year. It's like, Carlos Sainz he's in a midfield car. He's consistently one of the best of the rest. He's a brilliant, talented young driver, just getting his career started. And we've hardly seen any of him on TV
I know.
this
What
year.
is that all about? What is that all about?
I don't know. I guess they think the
Leclerc. I guess they like the Leclerc. They like the Verstappen.
Yeah, all the top teams battling. But yeah, the whole I wish the midfield got shown more.
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
there are 16. Well, I don't know. I guess it's like the top 3, then 5 midfield teams, and then Haas are like just below, and then Williams are like all the way in the sewer at the bottom. But
Williams.
yeah. I wish we'd get more midfield battles on TV. But yeah, Carlos Sainz, his first podium, and it's not even a real podium.
I know. Did you see their photo posting? They said P3. That was the most sad photo I have ever seen.
Yeah.
I just felt so bad for the team.
Well, that's what everybody, after the race, as soon as they were, in the cool-down room, if they said, look, if you're going to penalize Hamilton, you got to do it now. Because you can't take this away from Carlos.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you think he deserves the podium because Lewis deserves the penalty, you have to give him this podium. And, it took them too long to decide, but, if they're not going to hold it's not like, we're going to wait an hour for every single investigation we've got going on to finish, and then we'll do you can't do that.
Yeah.
So Hamilton goes on the podium and celebrates, but it ends up being Sainz in third. But then he was under investigation for the DRS use. Nothing came of that.
That was kind of weird.
Yeah, I remember when Perez was on the podium for I guess they were still Force India back then. It was Baku.
Force India.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like he gets the podium, but they're talking about him. DRS after a restart, was that illegal or not? But I wish DRS didn't exist. Ultimately,
yeah.
I'd like to see, with these 2021 cars in particular, I'd like to see cars that allow for overtaking without needing the assistance of the DRS or, I guess Indy cars got the push to pass. We're talking about push to pass in NASCAR now with potential hybrid engines fan boost in Formula E. Let's not do any of those gimmicks. Let's have teams, create rules and create their cars within the rules and regulations, not to the point where they're spec, but to the point where they're close enough to allow for great racing without needing the aid of DRS or anything else.
Yeah, but I would, counter. What would Williams do without DRS? I feel like they'd finish 5 laps behind without DRS.
Yeah, poor. I don't know. I mean, everybody's talking. I guess George Russell's outqualified Kubica every race, and I hate to say it because Kubica, the fact that he's even alive is remarkable.
Yes, absolutely.
Let alone back racing, let alone back in a Formula One car after it had been 8 years. So the comeback just to make it was remarkable. But it's pretty impossible to ignore at this point that he's not the driver he once was, and he's not at the level that his young teammate George Russell is at. But people are saying, "Oh, Kubica is dragging them down, and they'll put Latifi in the car next year, and everything will be great."
Oh, yep, Latifi.
It's like, you guys are setting yourselves up for disappointment if you're Williams fans, because you're crazy if you think Latifi's going to do. You could put Hamilton in the car.
Yeah,
he's not
no
going
to.
Can... You could bring Ayrton Senna back, and he's not. There's nothing anybody could do in that Williams right now. It is objectively a terrible race car.
Absolutely. I would say the top team in Formula 2 could be a Williams car. Hands out. Latifi in his F2 car.
You remember when what was it? The team started as Virgin.
Yep.
And then became Marussia and then Manor. But I remember it was the second revamp, when they almost went under, and they had to skip Australia in 2015, and they came back for the second race in Malaysia, and it was like, okay, this is their qualifying time, and this is the pole time from a GP2 race, and the pole time from a GP2 race is 2 seconds faster. like that's Williams today. But you expect that out of a Manor because they have no budget, and they have no history. Williams has all the history. Williams has tons of championships and victories and prestige.
I don't know what happened.
There was, I guess it was 97 to 04. Well, I guess 97's their last championship with Villeneuve. But even till 04, they were pretty competitive. And then you started seeing a downward trend. Then it got really bad at the turn of a decade. And then the V6 engines come in, and they strike a deal with Mercedes, which they have to this day. And, of course, Mercedes cracked the code on that better than anybody, obviously, with their works team being so dominant.
Yeah.
And so we saw they beat Ferrari in 2014. They finished third. They beat Red Bull in 2015 to finish third. And so it was like, well, okay, it looks like they're maybe we talk about the big three teams today. Maybe Williams is that fourth team, clearly the best of the rest. They slipped back to fifth the next year. And I remember Claire Williams saying, we cannot afford to lose fourth place. Losing third is going to be bad enough for our team. If we lose fourth, the amount of money we're losing in the constructors is going to be devastating. They finished 5th in 16, 5th in 17, only got one podium each of those 2 years. And disaster in 2018 and even worse this season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's sad. There's so much history of that team.
You don't want to see it go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But, I don't know how can you continue to exist in the state that they're in? Something's got to change at some point, or else it's inevitable.
I think 2021 will. It'll either something happens, big change.
I don't know. Maybe they pull a Honda, sell the team, and somebody like Ross Brawn steps in, and then they win the championship. Maybe. But yeah, and then probably the biggest surprise to come out of this race, Pierre Gasly didn't get a podium all year in a Red Bull.
He goes in a
Toro Rosso. I don't get the guy looks so great in GP2. Goes to Super Formula. Only reason he doesn't go to F1 is because there's no seat available. Goes to Super Formula, looks great over there. Goes to Toro Rosso. Looks pretty strong, worthy of a call up from Red Bull. Gets the call up from Red Bull. Absolutely terrible in the Red Bull when Verstappen's out here competing for poles and wins. And Gasly can't even get, a top 5.
Absolutely.
and here's Gasly demoted back to Toro Rosso over the summer break, and he has a podium now.
I just kept wondering what changed.
I don't know if did he have more pressure on him when he went to Red Bull? Did the Red Bull the car not fit his driving style? Was it the worst possible car you could have given him? Not in terms of performance and potential, but just for him? Because, clearly the guy's got talent.
Absolutely.
He's a good driver, but just the Red Bull did not mesh with him. But now he's got a podium. And just the energy on the radio after he crossed the finish line,
Absolutely.
screaming for, so long, just so excited. I don't know. It almost makes me wish something had happened to Verstappen. Just so
I know.
could you imagine a Toro Rosso winning a race in 2019? But I shouldn't say that. Verstappen thoroughly deserved to win the race. But at the same time, it just so happy for Pierre Gasly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have to. I don't know. I want to ask you. Germany was obviously thrilling too. Another race where Toro Rosso ended up on the podium. I think these were clearly the two best races of the year. If you had to pick one race, which one did you think was better?
I like this race better.
You like this race better?
I mean, obviously Mercedes won their title. Everyone's like, "Oh, this race is it's just another mundane F1 race or whatever. Let's finish out the season." But with all the drama with Ferrari, I mean, Hamilton knocking out Red Bull.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just great.
I definitely like the conclusion to this one better.
Yeah,
I think looking at the race as a whole, I think Germany had the storylines going for it all throughout, which is why I think I would probably give it the slight edge. But this race, I mean, Interlagos put on an amazing show. Yeah. There's no denying that. So I know there's talks about trying to get a street race in Rio, but there probably wouldn't be room for 2 Grands Prix in Brazil. We can't lose this track. This is it. There's so much history of this track, and it puts on a great show. I think back to the title fight in 2008. Senna's miraculous drive there in '91. The track never fails to amaze me in how good the quality of the racing can be there.
Absolutely. And
we got another fantastic finish and fantastic race on Sunday. So
yep, Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah, Abu Dhabi coming up. It's the last race. Everybody's got to enjoy Thanksgiving, and then it's weird. Like an F1 race in December, like that's crazy to me. Like, isn't that weird?
Yeah,
like,
no, it is weird.
It wasn't that long ago the season was ending in October, and now it's like, and it's. The calendar's grown a little bit, but it's not like we're doing 25 races now. I think that's Liberty's max that they want to go to. Like they maybe want to expand the calendar to that amount at some point. Whether the teams are gonna be in favor of that, I don't know. I think the teams think 21 is difficult enough, and it's gonna be 22 next year, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we're getting Vietnam and.
At this point, Williams is gasping for air. They're just saying, "Please, more money. I just need a break."
Yeah,
I really hope Williams can do something great, miraculous for 2020.
Yeah. So we've got Vietnam and the Dutch Grand Prix coming back next year too. So it is 22 races. We're losing Germany. It seems like it's an every other year thing. Like it used to be the Nürburgring would host it one year, and then the Hockenheimring would host it the next, and Nürburgring hasn't hosted a race since 2013, so it's been like, okay, Hockenheim's back, and then it's gone, and then it's back, it's gone, it's back, and then it was back again this year, and it gave me hope that it was going to be a mainstay, and it's not on the schedule again.
Yeah.
So, and you think of the success of Vettel and Schumacher, how many successful drivers Germany has produced, there's a passionate fan base there. Mercedes, obviously, that's their home.
Yep, absolutely.
It just kills me that we're not going to have a race there next year, but... Yeah, lots to look forward to. Both one final race and then the 2020 season. And then, real quick, though, because I know you got to scoot out. I think it was like the day after you came on for the first time.
Yes.
They had the whole press conference. What do you think of 2021 rules and outline?
Honestly, I think I like the call. I think I like what they're coming up with. I think they're gonna have these. What did they say? Like these new crazy hybrid engines. I mean, they're really improving it. I don't know. Or was that future talks?
There's talk about trying to go zero emissions.
Yeah, that was by 2030. They said
something like that. Yeah,
that got me a little excited too. I mean, I'm really excited for 2021. I think a lot of the teams were talking about like finances? Like, are they going to put caps on
Yeah,
things?
$175 million cap, but that only goes towards like R&D. That doesn't go to like team marketing and driver salaries. So
Yeah.
McLaren would still be free to pay Alonso a ridiculous sum of money if he were still driving for them. Like, obviously, Alfa Romeo's not even paying the drivers, a fraction of
Absolutely.
what McLaren or Mercedes would be paying their star drivers. So the top teams will still be able to continue to do that. The top teams will still be able to hire the best engineers. So I'm not like, I think some fans see that spending cap and it's like, oh, okay, this is great. This is an opportunity for Renault and Haas and Racing Point to go up and take the fight to Mercedes. And I'm like, I don't know about that, guys. I mean, maybe the first year somebody will find a loophole, but after that, I think you're going to see the same. I think the midfield will be a little bit closer, but ultimately, I still think it's going to be Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull up top.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. I mean, it's so hard to speculate without concrete, plans, details, all there. But I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for the car designs.
Oh, absolutely, they look so sweet.
And just I love, NASCAR's got this rules package where they've got maximum downforce in the words of Dale Jr., giant A -- spoilers. Yeah. And they've reduced the horsepower to try to make the race that's their idea of trying to make the racing closer, and thus better and more entertaining. And F1 sees their problems, now they have to improve their cars, and their solution is to reduce the amount of effect dirty air has on the car following.
Yep.
They're looking at reducing the downforce. They love high horsepower.
Absolutely.
And NASCAR's doing whatever the heck they're doing. Just never ceases to amaze me. But yeah, I'm excited. I think there's a lot of good things that are coming out of that outline. I think the future is very bright for the sport.
Yep. Formula One is thriving. I mean, who doesn't want to watch Formula One, right? Although Formula E, maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but they've got their gimmicks too.
I know, so. Formula E. I hope for the best.
Yeah. Until they have a fan boost for a playoff spot, I think, or a fan vote for a playoff spot or something, I think fan boost is even worse than the playoffs to me.
Yep. Fan boost is the most. Oh, that is so cringy. I can't. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be one thing if it were like, okay, we're having an exhibition race, a demonstration or something, and we'll let the fans, have a say in it. But to have the fans have a say in every single points paying officially sanctioned event, I don't know. Just bothers me. But Del, I know you got a paper to write, so I'm going to let you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. And yeah, we'll see if we can maybe get you in here one more time before the
one more time
semester.
Before.
Yeah, maybe after Abu Dhabi, because F1's really the only thing still going on right now. Everybody else is pretty much in the off season. So, yeah, thanks again.
Alrighty,
have a good night.
Have a good night.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the NASCAR Championship weekend at Homestead. So, the Truck Series race happened on Friday night. Twitter was an interesting. I went to bed. We had a cross country meet. I was away at regionals, and I woke up Saturday morning. I didn't stay up for the end of the race. But I found out Matt Crafton won, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And just such a mixed reaction on Twitter. Like I said, fans who like the playoffs, like the unpredictability, and then the fans that think it's a total joke. Matt Crafton hadn't had a top 5 since Texas in June. That's how long it had been since he so much as finished in the first 5 spots. He barely snuck into the playoffs. In fact, it was so close that Kyle Busch's 51 team, by virtue of how well Kyle ran in that car and Greg Biffle even getting a win for them, their development drivers running well, they actually bumped the 88 ThorSport team that Crafton drives for out of the owners' playoffs. So Crafton was in the championship fight on the driver's side. ThorSport, they weren't even in the owners' championship with that truck. So Crafton barely gets into the playoffs, has engine trouble in the first round, barely gets out of the first round. The only reason he got out of the first round was because others have the same issues. He's the last of the 4 championship contenders to clinch their spot in the Homestead. And then because this is the only race that matters for crowning the champion, this is the only one, you only have to finish ahead of your competitors in this one particular single race. Everyone else around Crafton doesn't bring their A game, doesn't have a good day. Austin Hill's off winning the race. Congratulations to him, by the way, Notori. Crafton finishes second. That's all it takes. He's your champion. And I don't know if this breaks the playoff system. I think the playoff system was already broken. You can't break what's already broken. But I don't know. There's so much. It's hilariously flawed. I think that's a term that I would use. Matt Crafton, I don't want to take, and let me be very clear. I don't want to take anything away from Crafton. He went out with the rules that he was given. He doesn't write the rules. NASCAR writes the rules. He did what he had to do to get into the playoffs. He did what he had to do to advance, and he did what he had to do that night in Homestead to win a championship. And he's a good driver. He's a worthy champion. He's got 2 championships already. This is his 3rd. And I like the guy. I really do. And I'm happy for him. I want to make that clear too. I'm not bitter. I'm a Ross Chastain and Brett Moffitt fan. I'm not bitter that they lost. I'm not going to hold a grudge. I'm happy for Matt. I'm happy for ThorSport. I want them to be able to celebrate. But I think when you look at it objectively, when you look at his statistics, can we really say Matt Crafton had a championship caliber year? I'm not sure we can. I don't, there's not another series in the world that would allow a driver that had the statistics in the season that he had to be even close to mathematically eligible for the championship going into the final race, let alone win it. But yet, with this system that NASCAR has created, a driver that's running really towards the top end of the middle of the pack at best on average all year, and that, again, not to say Crafton's not a champion already, not a good driver, just the season that he had this year. Did he deserve a championship this year? I don't want to call him an undeserving champion because, again, he did what he had to do with this format. But is he the most worthy of the championship to hoist that trophy at the end of the year? I think when you look at the season Brett Moffitt had, winning a bunch of races again with GMS, picking up right where he left off with Hattori last year. Absolutely. I think he absolutely had a championship caliber season. I think Ross Chastain, to be quite honest, had a championship caliber season. But I also think, let me be unbiased here, objectively speaking, his presence in the Championship 4 alone, I think, was a little bit controversial because he didn't start the season as a Truck Series registered driver. He was registered to score points in the Xfinity Series. And it was only after he had strong runs with Nice, he picked up support from various sponsors and the alliance that Nice has with GMS. He won a race at Kansas. He went ahead and thought, we could have a shot at a championship. I'm not going to have a shot at a championship in Xfinity with the team I'm driving for. Why don't we go ahead and switch our declaration to points in the Truck Series? And I don't blame him for doing it. The rules are written that way. But, he technically, he didn't miss the first third of the season. He was in the races, but he wasn't scoring points. And again, no other series in the world would let a driver be at 0 points after 8 races and have any shot at a championship. There's no other format, there's no other series anywhere that would let you do that. But I think when you look at the season he had results-wise, if he had been scoring points, and I know Nice is an underfunded team, comparative to ThorSport and KBM and GMS and some of the top teams over there. I think Ross Chastain, the way he drove this season, was worthy of a championship. Or at least an argument could be made. We wouldn't be questioning his ability had he been hoisting the championship trophy. And I'm not questioning Crafton's ability either. I've made that clear. But the season that he had, I don't think he was the most worthy driver or the right driver to be hoisting that championship trophy. So that's really all I have to say on that. But I do want to congratulate him, and I harbor no bitterness or ill will because this is the format we have. So, Crafton doesn't choose the rules, TOROsport doesn't choose the rules, NASCAR does. And if you have disappointment or anger, don't direct it towards him. Be happy for him. Direct it towards NASCAR instead. So that's what happened in the Truck Series. Let's get into the Xfinity Series. Tyler Reddick repeats. He is a champion once again. And this championship, I think, will officially validate him as a talented prospect who deserves to be going to Cup next year. I know there was a lot of talk last season about how he won that championship. Matt Cole even sat right across from me in this studio and said Reddick, again, don't want to take anything away from him, but he went out so far as to say Reddick was not a deserving champion. When you have a third best driver on your team, not even in the series, on your team, statistically speaking, all year, you're not really worthy of a championship. At least this is what Matt was thinking. And I tend to agree. Again, I wouldn't go so far as to say he didn't deserve his championship, but it was much like Crafton this year. The guy won at Daytona, kind of had a so-so season the rest of the year, generally speaking, given the car that he was in, but then made it to Homestead, mastered the high line, won the race, thus won the championship. But this season was different. Tyler Reddick actually changed teams over from Junior Motorsports to Richard Childress Racing. Had a very strong year, much stronger year than I was expecting, because I personally viewed Junior Motorsports program as being a little bit stronger than RCR's. I thought Reddick would maybe get a win or two, but run the same, if not maybe even a little bit worse, in the RCR car than he ran in the Junior Motorsports car. But he came around this season. He had a really productive year, was one of the big three, along with Christopher Bell and Cole Custer, that was getting all the attention, all the hype, all the press. Absolutely, I think his championship this year is totally valid. He had a very strong season, and I want to congratulate him. He did a heck of a job Saturday night. Again, mastering the high line, got around Cole Custer with about 20 to go, and then set sail. So I want to talk about the Xfinity package a little bit too. The high line worked. When you have high horsepower and low downforce, if you know how to get around Homestead, you know how to get as close to the wall as you can without hitting it, you're going to have an advantage. Driver skill matters with the package the Xfinity Series has right now. It was not that way in the Cup race. We'll get to that in a second. But it was a pretty good race, in my opinion. One of the best races of the year. We saw thrilling side-by-side action with all three of the top championship contenders, and even Justin Allgaier. I don't want to discount Allgaier entirely. He was up there as well for a while. Of course, he hit the wall and had a flat tire at the end, but he looked strong too. So given what NASCAR wants to create, this drama with these four drivers, they got what they were wanting. You have all four of these drivers up at the front fighting for a championship. And the racing was close. The racing was exciting. And then Christopher Bell made a mistake not being able to get on the pit road. So then it was just Custer and Reddick. As I mentioned, Reddick got around him, then kind of drove away and won an absolutely deserving championship. And I'll tell you what, I'm excited for the Cup Series next year. I think we've got a very, very promising rookie class. Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, Cole Custer are all going to put on a show. They're all going to Cup. Reddick will be replacing Daniel Hemrick at RCR. Christopher Bell is replacing Matt DiBenedetto at Levine Family Racing. And Cole Custer replacing Daniel Suarez at Stewart Haas. And all three of those rides are going to be very strong. And even LFR, I think Levine is going to get some increased technical support from JGR, even more than they had this year. So I expect all three of those guys to... Obviously, I'm not expecting, a threat to win every single week in a championship right out of the gate. But I'm expecting strong runs, and I'm expecting all three of them to only get better. And I think all three could be Cup champions down the road. They've also shown tremendous promise this season in Xfinity. It's been really fun to watch them. And it's made the Xfinity Series, I think, quite honestly, the most enjoyable of the three series this year. particularly when the Cup drivers aren't, racing down and we get to see these three fight it out for themselves. It's been a lot of fun. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Landon Cassill. Landon Cassill's been doing some start and park this year for Morgan Shepherd's team. Morgan Shepherd, if you don't know, is a seasoned veteran in NASCAR in general, but the Xfinity Series in particular. The guy's 78 years old. He's been racing for 5 decades now, over 50 years, and hasn't stopped. He still owns his own team, competes in the Xfinity Series on a weekly basis. But midway through this season, he stepped aside from the car, not competing himself, doing the start and park duties himself. He had Landon Cassill start doing it. And Cassill was getting in the car, doing what start and park teams do, running a handful of laps every week. Pulled it in, trying to accumulate funds, save resources. Well, Shepherd's team got sponsorship this weekend to run the full race. And Landon Cassill has been showing a lot of speed in practicing qualifying this year. So I think we were all very excited when we heard that Cassill was going to get the opportunity to run the full race, and showcase what he could do and what that team could do. And ended up bringing the car home 15th, and that was really special. For me as a fan of the underdogs, the start and park teams, the underfunded, to see what that car can do when it is allowed to run the full race, when it has the funding to run the full race, I think speaks volumes. And I hope that some business or some company, some sponsor was out there watching that, following that story and seeing it, and is going to step up and allow that team to run more races next year. And Cassill, if he has the opportunity to come back with them, get the chance to go do it again. And this is why I get so frustrated with Fox and NBC, especially during the playoffs, when, it seems like all the focus is on the playoff drivers and only the playoff drivers. And, we see it's in the round of 8, it feels like you're watching an 8-car race. And if you're watching Homestead, it feels like the Championship 4 gets so much attention, as they should. They should get a lot of attention with the stakes that they're after. But there are still 36 other drivers out there. And 34 in the Xfinity Series and 28 in trucks. They're out there too. And when there are storylines to cover, the media needs to be covering them. And I feel like we lose that every year, particularly when we get in the playoffs among the smaller teams. But I hope somebody out there noticed the run that Cassill and Shepherd's team had. Because they're capable of doing great things. They just need the funding to be able to do it. So I want to give them a shout out, give them my kudos and congratulations, because that was really special to see. And let's get into the Cup Series race to finish it off. And, Jeff Gluck puts that poll out every week. Was it a good race? The poll closed at 30% yes, which means 7 out of 10 NASCAR fans did not like the Homestead race, did not think it was a high-quality, good race. And then one of the top replies to Gluck's tweet, somebody thought of the brilliant idea to ask, well, I want to see how close to 100% we can get this. Was the Xfinity Series race a good race? And at the time I took the screenshot, I don't know, I'd have to go back and check again, but 94% of the poll was yes. So what does that say? To me, it says NASCAR has moved in a direction this year with the rules package at intermediate tracks, high downforce, low horsepower. Hopefully that'll make the racing closer. It hasn't made the racing closer. Kyle Busch basically had a cakewalk the last few laps. And he even said it himself after the race. In 2015, Harvick was only a couple seconds back, and he had to make sure that he didn't make a mistake, didn't make sure he didn't screw up, because Harvick was going to be right there to pass him. This year was totally different. Busch got to celebrate for the entirety of the final lap because he knew that one little bobble here or there was not going to make a difference. He had such a massive lead. Once he took the white flag and the thought of overtime went out the window, he was going to be the champion. So the racing is not closer. If anything, it's actually stretched the pack out even further. Cars are not as fast. They're easier to drive. They don't drive as well when they're close, which is maybe why the racing hasn't been as close or as entertaining. and it's impossible to pass. And it's a problem that we need to address. It's a problem that I think NASCAR is even looking at addressing next year on the short tracks and road courses. Short tracks and road courses have really been killed this year. It just, if you look at the poll results from Martinsville took such a hit. The road courses took such a hit this year. So I really hope they do something with it on short tracks and road courses, but I hope they do something with it on the intermediate tracks too. And I know we've got one more season we got to get through before the new car comes out. But that next Gen 7 car, whatever it's going to be called, it better be a good one. And NASCAR better, I think the answer is right there. As we mentioned not so long ago, Formula One's doing it. Reduce the effects that dirty air has on the following car. I think it's very simple. It's just a matter of NASCAR sitting down and trying to design a car and a package that can do it. And it's important to have in the Cup Series because the racing in Xfinity can be great, the racing in trucks can be great, but ultimately, Cup is where the superstars are. Cup is where the most coverage is going to be. Cup is where the most viewership and attendance is going to be because you want to see the best race. And the casual fan turning on the Cup Series this year, if it wasn't a super speedway, I doubt they were impressed. That's just how it is. And Homestead was no exception. So it was unfortunate that we didn't get the same quality racing that we saw. Stage 2 was okay, but Stage 1 and Stage 3 were just absolute snooze fests, I think. Not a whole lot of action, not a whole lot of close, entertaining racing. I mean, some maybe here or there, but not nearly as much as we had in the Xfinity race, and not nearly as much as we need for this championship event that NASCAR tries to hype up every year. And that was the other thing. I don't know what it was this year, but it just seemed like, even thinking back 2 or 3 years ago, it didn't seem like there was as much hype this year. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but just, I don't know. I felt like something was missing this season, but whatever. Let's get into what actually happened in the race. Kyle Busch is a wheelman. You can love the guy, you can hate the guy, but he absolutely deserves this championship. And if you look at the stats on Racing Reference, judging by the non-playoff standings, he would have won it anyway. I know racing, believe me, I'll be the first to make clear, if we talk about what would this season have looked like if they had playoffs, what would this season have looked like if we didn't have playoffs, I'll be the first to tell you, you can't say that because the racing would have been different, the strategies would have been different, the results would have been different. But I think it's proof that Kyle Busch had a great year. I think it's proof that he is absolutely a championship caliber driver, and had a championship caliber season. If you take a look at those standings as well, you've got 5 drivers who would go into the final race with a mathematical shot of a championship instead of just 4. Which, again, racing would have been different if we didn't have playoffs, but it's proof that you don't need a playoff system to have an entertaining final championship battle at the final race. But congratulations again to Kyle Busch. Kevin Harvick had a all right night, but ultimately not strong enough to compete with the Gibbs cars. The other Gibbs cars ran into trouble, though. Denny Hamlin had tape put on the car during a pit stop. They ultimately put too much on. Car overheated, started spewing water out of a hood. They had to come down pit road again, remove the tape. That was basically the end of his night. Only caution was going to save him at that point. It didn't come out. And Martin Truex's team as well, very similar. Looked strong, looked like they might be the favorites at one point in the race. The pit crew put the wrong side tires on the wrong side of a car. And I can't remember, as a fan who's been watching for over 10 years now, I can't remember the last time I saw that. I don't know if I've ever seen that. You think of these pit crews as being so on top and of everything and so organized. Here we are in the championship race, and Martin Truex's team makes such a critical mistake. And he was able to fight back and be there at the end should Busch have run into trouble. But ultimately, it was something that they didn't need to have happen. It was a setback that they had to overcome, and I think that took some of their momentum away and gave it to the other drivers. And so Kyle Busch won the championship. brilliant drive and a brilliant season. I know some fans say he tailed off at the end a little bit, having not won a race since Pocono, but if you look at his results, generally speaking, he made it to the championship for a reason. He had strong runs pretty much every week. He always looked like he was at least in the top tier and had a shot to get to Homestead. And then when you get to Homestead, anything can happen. And he went out and won the race. So congratulations again to him and Joe Gibbs Racing, especially given the year Gibbs has had. Absolute dominance, 19 of 36 races won, including the Daytona 500 and a championship. It doesn't get much better than that. And finally, as we close the show, I want to say farewell to Paul Menard and David Ragan. And these are two drivers that won 1 and 2 races in their Cup Series careers, respectively. Maybe not the most well-known names if you're a casual fan of the sport. For that reason, not a whole lot of success, at least at the Cup level. But it was striking for me to come to this realization on Sunday morning. I thought about Paul Menard, the career he's had. I thought about David Ragan, the career he's had. Traced it back to their rookie seasons. They shared a rookie season in 2007. 2007 was the first year that I watched NASCAR full-time, followed the sport, paid attention to the series. So I thought about 2007. I thought about the rookie class. And I realized that as of Sunday night, every member of that rookie class is retired. At least retired from full-time Cup Series competition. Montoya left the Cup Series to go to Indy cars, now racing sports cars. Ragan and Menard just retired. David Rudiman's retired. AJ Allmendinger's part-time. He's doing TV work for NBC. That's the entire class. All 5 of those guys are retired. So it's striking to me. And I don't know if it's a sign of things to come, because Paul Menard and David Ragan, I think absolutely, if they wanted to come back next season, I think a spot would be open for them. Menard is getting along well with the Wood brothers. I think that was a good partnership. David Ragan obviously caught front row motorsports, their first win. Their family over there. But both wanted to take a step back. Both had been satisfied with their careers. And I remember back in the day, Harry Gant winning races in his 50s, and even as recently as Mark Martin winning races, after he turned 50, for Hendrick Motorsports. I don't know if we're going to see that again. At least not nearly as often, because guys I think are retiring younger. Guys are satisfied with their careers, and I think this format that we have now, so much stress and preparation goes into just getting to Homestead, let alone if you're lucky enough to get to Homestead, if you're good enough to get to Homestead in the Championship 4, it's a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of effort. I don't know if that's going to suck some of the life out of these drivers and, make them say, yeah, I'm done a little bit sooner than they might otherwise. So that was an interesting thing for me that I noticed. I just wanted to bring up briefly. But farewell to them. Paul Menard, David Ragan, both absolutely deserving of a good retirement. Never particularly was an active fan of those guys, but certainly didn't hate them either. 2 guys who love the sport, and I think guys we're going to miss. It's going to be weird not seeing them out on the track next year. So that's going to do it, I think, for this week's edition of the Photo Finish. There's not going to be a show next week. I'm going to be off for Thanksgiving break already. Tuesday's the last day of classes here at Gordon. But stay tuned, because we've got a couple more shows coming up after that before the Christmas break. And I'm going to see Ford versus Ferrari tomorrow, and I'm hoping to get a friend of mine that I'm going to see it with into the studio so that we can review it when we get back. So stay tuned for that. But for now, I'm Ben Schneider. I want to thank Doyoung Lee for coming into the studio again for the first half of the show. We'll see you guys down the road. Have a good night, everybody.